Good morning, everyone. This is Shauna, and I'm here today to continue our discussion of the Bob and Nikki series. This brings us to book 14, Deadbot. Let me share the screen at this time. Here's the cover of the ebook version for Kindle. You see a nice bot there. The title comes from the various times when Bob literally finds dead bots, meaning bots that have been deactivated throughout the book. This is one of my favorite installments in the series. It's quite a bit more emotional and somewhat more dramatic than some of the other installments are, but we really get a telling indication of Bob's concern for the bots a little later on in the story. So let me backtrack a bit and put the notes on the screen here. But we know that Bob has concern for the bots. He's shown that before in big and small ways, like when he took the bot out of the trench and she had been buried and helping the bots get acclimated and letting some of the older bots ride the transit. We've seen that. But there's a lot of things that happen in this book that really showcase the working relationship between Bob and his bots and their unique capabilities of both. So this installment picks up obviously where book 13 left off. There's the crew is starting to heat an enormous asteroid so they can temper it, get the mineral scandium that they need from it, and make new hulls. The colonists, the Roo colonists, are getting settled on their new planet, but some of them are having complaints and they're having altercations with the people on the surface, and that will become an issue later. Meanwhile, John Branham and Jane, formerly Williams, have their new baby, Marianne, a little girl, named for Bob, whose middle name is Marion. So they give it a spin on that. Bob hires Ellie and Lita, the Roos, for Gene's crew as basically Roo consultants. He doesn't really find a lot for them to do initially, but there's a lot going on in this book. So initially, they're Roo consultants. There's also a side plot involving Frank's attempts to work on the new drive technology. The first test article, though, fails. Meanwhile, Willem returns from dropping off his passenger, and Mr. Rodham, if you'll remember, winds up on a planet full of slogums, which is not going to be too pleasant for him. Bob's birthday is celebrated in this book as a means of bringing people together culturally. So, meanwhile, in terms of where we are about the first quarter of the book, we have the Armstrong and Roo space to monitor the system and negotiate with Majel. We have John and Jane are planning to go to Earth system to be available if Max needs help with the Space Force. Steve and the Gus Grissom are guarding the Squatch, and John Paul stays with Sally, and some of John Paul's Marines will crew the blue light special. So then, once we kind of get through that, so we've kind of set up the colonists as much as we can. The plot thickens when Bob gets a distress call from his Marine chief, Andre, and finds a jammer that has all the bots on the surface shutting down. And what they figure out is that none of the bots can go down to the surface. They're all being affected by this jamming device. So Bob takes 6 crews of organics. And there's a very dramatic scene in this book. If you read it, you can enjoy it. But it basically, he sets up a retrieval operation to retrieve all of these bots in the middle of the night. And it's a huge, huge deal for the bots, because he's treating them like people. And at one point, Andre says that, I'm a Marine. I'm built to take damage. And he says, yeah, but you're my crew member and I need to get you back. So at this point, like, the bot loyalty um, goes way up. And there's evidence of squirrel sabotage, which is another thing that you see in this book. There's a lot of deep squirrel sabotage going on in this installment, and you have a, a kind of a sinister subplot that continues to build with the squirrel. That there's this long standing sort of um, animosity that the squirrels have toward other races, and they try to keep them out of the Commonwealth and out of squirrel space, and, and blame a lot of their actions on the Commonwealth, actually. Um, Back on board the Gene, Bob gets an honor guard for the rescue. Um, but then we have another piece of the subplot, because now, remember, we have bots, we have humans, we have squatches on Charlie's planet where Steve is, we have squirrels, but now we have 2 kinds of squirrels. We have squirrels with tails and squirrels without tails, called bobtails. And so we've got a couple of bobtails that come about. And what happened is, um, there's evidence that more colonies of tailed squirrels may exist, and that in the Commonwealth, um, they intentionally sabotage FTL drive. And the females were forced to become mating stock for the colony. So this is going to become a growing, kind of recurring subplot as you go through the books. Then we have a thing with, there's one bot that Bob woke up, AA289, and he does not like Bob's way of doing things. And during the rescue, he actually defects, he deserts. And the Marines don't want him, obviously. And so what Bob ends up doing is selling him to Sam, who's one of the Roo pioneers, basically, and probably the best of the Roos to be um, not recruited, but working there. Um, and Sam and AA289 get in a situation similar to what the bots did. And so Bob is determined to go down and figure out what's going on. There's a cave formation that they get stuck in. And what they find, so now we have 2 races of squirrels. We have roos, we have humans, and we have bots. That's 5 species. Now we're going to get half squatch, half human hybrid. And so there's a considerable portion of the 2nd half of this book devoted to sort of this backstory on the squatch-human hybrids, we have some new people. We have Fumble, who, similar to Falls a lot among the squatch, has a balance problem, and he can't really do much. He's also colorblind. We have um we have Abel, his mother, and then Fumble's siblings, Waddle, a boy, a little young half squatch boy, and Sit, his sister. So that little family we follow toward the end of the book, and this is where the next installment will pick up with their kind of being hired on and whatnot. Um, and then we have this guy named Thump who lost a leg, and he has a prosthesis like Steve did. And he's been keeping the colony going at the bottom of this cave without light on the surface for years. And what they've been told is that if they go to the surface, they'll die because there's predators up there that will eat them. And so they're waiting for the squirrels to come back. So naturally, when Bob's team comes with all organics and he takes Tiki and Lackey with them, they think that they're there to rescue them, and they are, but it's not the scenario that they think. So now we have that subplot continuing, and Bob has Natty Dressy, who, if you remember, is the squirrel ambassador. Um, look into the records, and there is a plot to produce half Squatch soldiers. The ship that brought them to the planet and put them underground has been reported lost, and all of the responsible parties, of course, are presumed dead. Um, so there's no evidence to indicate that the emperor had any knowledge of the operation, and only those involved knew any details. So we've got this sort of burgeoning relationship with the Roos. We've got this ongoing tension with the squirrels, despite the fact that Bob's doing his best to work with them. We've got tension back on Earth with the Space Forces trying to come after the Commonwealth tech. So we've got a lot of subplots. And now we've got these half Squatch people. And so we also have uh, the planet that Diego discovered that Bob had hopes for, has a lot of big carnivorous animals on it, similar to the planet that Millie and Janet were on. But they're looking for the lost squirrel freighter that did this to the half Squatches. And this book ends with um, Bob bringing aboard Abel and Thump and Sit and Fumble as crewmates, and so we're gonna have to see how they um, acclimate to the crew. But that's it for this installment. Like I said, I really find that in this installment you really see how the bots and the humans interact with each other, and you really see the bond that Bob has with the bots and how he handles interspecies relations, what we would call DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Um, that's sort of Bob's brand of DEI. And you really see him trying to make everyone have uh, their best outcome at heart. So it's really about maximizing your strengths. And I really appreciate that about these books. It's nice to read books where people's strengths are found and leveraged and they're moved around until they fit. And then they you try to make good company, and you start to see even the young people have a role. And I really appreciate that about these books and this installment in particular. So that's it for this week's installment of the Bob and Nikki series. Tune in next week, Lord willing, for book 16. I'm sorry, book 15, Admiral Bob. But that's next week. I will talk to you in my next video very soon. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye for now.